Hello, everybody. We might make a start of it. So, if that suits everybody, okay, you're all very welcome to the session today, and I hope that this morning finds everybody well and safe. Maybe just to begin, to put my paranoia at ease, could I ask if everybody can hear me okay, and if they can see the slides that I'm currently showing? If you could just put something into the chat box, that would be very appreciated. That's great. Thanks very much, Holger. So, in the session today, what we will be looking to cover is something of a whistle stop tour of Canvas with a view to supporting remote teaching. So, maybe from the get go, just to let everybody know, if you were at this session yesterday morning, I will be covering a lot of the same things that I covered yesterday. So, if you were here yesterday, there isn't really going to be anything new. But apart from that, everybody is very welcome to stay and to attend. The other thing is that what we will be doing in this is I'm aware that some of us are joining through Zoom and some of us are looking at this over YouTube. So at the end of the session, I'll end the stream for YouTube, and anyone who's attending through Zoom, if you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But obviously, any kind of recurring questions, any important questions which get answered, we will be sure to push those out to CIT at large over the coming kind of few days. So, in terms of the session today, what we're going to be looking at is CIT's virtual learning environment, which I'm sure we're all aware at this stage is Canvas. So, just a very quick recap. Canvas is populated by Banner, which is the student record system. All staff and students are enrolled on relevant modules in Canvas and should have access to all relevant modules. And this was the main elements which Canvas can do is it can be used for sharing resources, receiving assessment files, and communicating with students. And we have over the past 13 months, I think, which we've been officially using Canvas. We've also integrated systems for live online lecturing. If anybody is around today, Shane will be doing a session on the integrated live lecturing system in Canvas called Conferences at 2 o'clock. And as well as that, there are systems for anti-plagiarism, automated assessments, learning analytics, and digital attendance. And the intention is that we'll continue to add to Canvas as time goes on so that it can facilitate more and support people in more and more ways. And another additional point, which might be relevant for the current kind of context we find ourselves in, Canvas provides mobile apps on both Android and iOS for both staff and students. So even if a staff member or if a student doesn't have, let's say, fantastic broadband in their house, if they have sufficient phone coverage, then they can use the mobile app to get at any notes which have been put up, any live lectures which will be ongoing. So if people do get a chance, I would encourage you, even just as kind of a backup support tool, to maybe try and download the mobile app for ye. It would obviously be the Canvas teacher app, and maybe just to play around with that and see if it can support you in any additional way. And we're hoping to do additional sessions on the use of the mobile apps as time goes on. So one of the biggest things in terms of the use of Canvas is that Canvas, and recently they've extended this to kind of conferences or Big Blue Button, the kind of live online lecturing system in Canvas, is that there's 24/7 support available for Canvas. So I'll show you in a moment when we go into Canvas, but the main way in which you can access that is you can, if you go to the help icon in the main Canvas left-hand menu, there's a number of options in there in terms of being able to contact this kind of 24/7 support service. You can do it through telephone, you can do it through email, and you can do it through web chat. And these are Canvas support agents, so you'll be dealing with one of those directly. And it may seem like we kind of try and push this quite a bit, but I guess the important thing in terms of this tier one support is that it is their job to support you in terms of your use of Canvas, and they are always available to do that. So um, they really do represent your best bet of getting whatever issue you're facing solved or getting feedback on something as quickly as possible. So I really would encourage you, if you have any problems in using Canvas, if you want to do something in Canvas but you're not entirely sure how, I really would encourage you to kind of make use of them. Like I said, they represent, I think, your best bet in terms of getting feedback or getting help with any issues you're facing. And what's more, they have access to the CIT Canvas instance, so they can go directly into your module and take a look and try and help you out with that. So that really is quite a useful kind of service which is available. So in terms of the use of Canvas for remote teaching, what I'm going to cover today, and apologies if I'm talking a bit fast, I'm going to try and cover quite a few things in the session today. I'm going to try and cover elements related to setting up the course for online teaching, communicating with students, assessment items, and also additional supports which are available. I'm aware that in the session today, there might be people who would be quite new to Canvas, but there might also be people who are quite kind of familiar with using Canvas. So I'm going to try and cover quite a broad amount, maybe just to try and give everybody who's attending something to kind of work with into the future. But we will be running additional sessions in terms of the use of Canvas over the next days and weeks. So we will be providing additional kind of training around, for example, specifically things to do with assessment or things to do with engagement, so on and so forth. But what I'm going to do, if you would bear with me 2 moments, is I'm just going to switch over to the live Canvas instance and start demonstrating some of the important kind of features to know about. Okay, so hopefully everybody should be able to see the open instance of Canvas, which I'm currently looking at. Again, if you could maybe just let me know through the chat box that you can see the Canvas course that I'm currently in, I'd appreciate that. So in terms of the use of Canvas, I suppose an initial kind of step, maybe just to be aware of, is around kind of setting up, excuse me, a Canvas course. So the way that the way Canvas modules are set up is that they're basically divided into these things called units. And you can essentially think of a unit as like a folder in which files are kept. So the way I would tend to set up my modules, for example, would be out of a unit called week 1, week 2, week 3, so on and so forth. So to create a unit, you can click on the red plus unit button up here, and then you simply give the unit a name, and that will allow you to add that particular unit in there. If I want to add a particular file or an assignment or a link or anything at all under that particular unit, what I do is I click on the plus button to the right of that unit, and from the drop down, what I can do is I can, for example, select file. I can select this item here for new file, which will give me the option to browse. So I can quickly kind of grab something, press add item, and that then is added under this particular unit. So that is how you can set up different kind of, let's say, units, but you can think of them maybe as folders and add particular items into each of those units. Now, an important element in terms of, I suppose, Canvas modules, but also units and files which are added to Canvas. If you can see here, there's a number of green ticks against each of the items that I've uploaded to this course and each of the units that I've set up for this particular course. What this refers to is if an item in Canvas is published or not. So if something in my Canvas module is published, that means that it's visible to students. If something is unpublished, it means that students can't see it. And the notion with this is that in Canvas, it's designed to maybe give you some control over what students see and what they can't see. So anything which I want students to be able to see should be published. And you can see that something is published by this little green tick next to it. If something is unpublished, it will have this kind of strike through icon like this particular unit has. So it's a good habit in using Canvas to get into the habit of checking that everything you want students to see is published. And if something is unpublished, the way you can make it published is you simply click on this icon, and you can see there it goes from that strike through icon to the green tick. So maybe just to get into the habit of keeping an eye out for those green ticks as a way of making sure that students can see what they're meant to see. And the other item, because this is kind of a test kind of module, which I'm using just for demonstration today, there is also an item typically in most Canvas modules up in the kind of top right corner here for publishing or unpublishing the module. And it's a similar premise to the units and the kind of files which are uploaded. If a module is unpublished, students won't be able to see it in their dashboard. If the module is published, then they can see it. So again, it's a question of maybe just getting into the habit of checking that your module is published and also that your units and your items are published as well. And a useful tool for helping to support this is this option. If you go to the home page in your module, this option over here on the right hand side for student view. So if I click into student view, what that does is it essentially logs me in as a student in Canvas. So it creates a kind of a fake student account, and I can see what the course looks like from a student perspective. So for example, I can see here that everything that I want them to be able to see, week 1, week 2, and week 3, all of those are published and all of those are visible. So it's no harm to maybe get into the habit of switching into student view regularly enough just to make sure that you can that students are seeing exactly what you want them to see. And you can tell that I'm in student view because there's this big purple kind of frame and a bar at the base of the screen telling me I'm currently logged into student view. If I want to exit student view at any time, I simply click on this leave student view button in the lower right corner, and that then brings me back into my regular role. So no harm in terms of setting up the course, just to maybe get into the habit of making sure everything is published and using student view as a way to verify that. Now, one other thing in terms of setting up your course day one is over on the left-hand side here. This is the kind of Canvas module menu. All of this kind of is designed to allow me to navigate to the different parts of this module. So if I want to see the assignments for this module, I click assignments. If I want to see the discussions for this module, I click into discussions, so on and so forth. And you can see here that certain items in this navigation menu have this little strike through icon next to them. And what that basically means is that they're not visible to students. So as a lecturer, I will always be able to see everything inside the module. But if you see the items on the left-hand side have this kind of icon, this invisible icon next to them, that means that they're currently not visible to students. So if I want to decide what it is that students see inside this menu on the left-hand side, what I can do is I can go into settings, and from here, I can click into the navigation tab up here. And what this allows me to do then is if I want to, I can drag items from the lower half of the screen, and anything in the lower half of the screen is invisible to students, to the upper half of the screen here, which means they become visible. So Conferences is the live online lecturing solution for Canvas. If I decide that I want to do some online lecturing and I want students to be able to access those, I simply drag the Conferences item here up into the upper half here. I drop it down beneath grades. And when I'm done with all that, I scroll down and I click on the Save button. And if we quickly jump back in here and go into student view, we can see that all of those, so Conferences is now visible, but any of the items which had that eye icon next to them, those are invisible to students. So in terms of getting the course set up, those are just the basic kind of steps I think which one might want to go through. After that, in terms of communicating with students, there's a number of different communication tools available in Canvas. So one of the most common ones would be a discussion forum. If I want to set up a discussion forum for my students, what I do is I click on the left-hand side here into discussions, and that then will take me into kind of all the discussion areas which are available to me for this module. If I want to create a new discussion, I simply click on the big red plus discussion button up here. And what that will allow me to do then is it will allow me to set up a new discussion. The fields that I would have to enter for this would be a title. So I'll call this, let's say, Introduce Yourself Part 2. And in here, I can write, for example, a description or a brief for the discussion, which will be visible to students. So, there's any number of options available to me here in terms of adding tables, media links, so on and so forth, YouTube videos, and editing how the text appears. Now, one other item which is useful in terms of, I suppose, a number of different areas in Canvas are these navigation kind of links in the kind of right-hand side here. So pages, assignment, quizzes, so on and so forth. And what this is useful for is basically these allow me to put in links to specific areas of this module. So for example, I might say a reminder that there's an assignment coming up. So reminder that deadline is due Friday for. And what I can do then is I can click on the assignments button over here, and I can click on, let's say, assignment 2. And that then puts in a link to that particular assignment for students. So it sends them directly to that assignment in this module. And what that can be very useful for is it can be very useful for really just signposting students in terms of where they need to go. So, another example of this might be, this is based on what we covered in, and I click into units and I select week 2. So through using these tools, it's possible to really kind of signpost, I guess, students in terms of where they should go, what they should be looking at, so on and so forth. Under post to, I can usually leave this as all sections. We don't really need to get into the kind of process of sections right now. That basically means everybody, all the students enrolled in the module will see it. If I want to, I can add in an attachment here, or maybe one other thing of note, if I want to add a link to a particular file into this area here, again, over on the right-hand side, there's options here for links. There's also a tab here for files. So I can select files. Any file that I've already uploaded, I can select, or else I can upload a new file by pressing this button here. So I can add an attachment here, and then there's a number of options in terms of how the discussion should kind of appear to students or how they should interact with it. So some of the kind of common things, I usually never kind of worry too much about any of these being ticked, but what might be useful is the ability to, for example, allow liking, to allow threaded replies, which means a student replies to my comment and someone else can reply under their kind of comment. And another option which might be of interest to some people is this option for graded. So if this is ticked, this basically means, and you can see here, there's a number of additional kind of grading options that appear to me here. If grading is ticked, it basically means that students can be given a mark against any discussion items which they add to or any way in which they contribute to this discussion. We'll maybe cover that in a different session, so I'm going to leave it unticked for the moment. I usually don't worry about making it a group discussion. And the other option then is to make it available from and until. Now this appears in a number of different areas inside in Canvas. And anytime you see this, what it essentially means is that if I put in a date from available from, let's say, Saturday, this means that this discussion won't be visible to students until after this date has passed. And if I put something into the until area, it means that they won't be able to see it after this date has passed. So essentially, this is only going to be visible to students from this date until this date. Now, we would recommend usually that you just leave these blank for the simple reason that it gets confusing for students if things are appearing and disappearing in the module. The only time that I've ever really used these is, for example, if I'm doing an automated quiz and I want students to do it in class, so only between, let's say, 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock on Wednesday. That is the only time I've ever really had need for filling these in. Most of the time I would recommend just leaving them blank. But when I'm happy with all of that, I can press save and publish, and that then becomes available to students. So they can come in and they can kind of add responses to this discussion in this area here. If I click back into the discussion area as well, just a very brief thing, there is this ability as well for pinned discussions. And the notion with that is that any discussions which are particularly relevant at the moment or should be kind of ongoing can be put up here, and they're essentially just really kind of highlighted to students. So the way you can kind of move a discussion from a normal discussion to a pinned discussion is you simply drag and drop using this kind of thing on the left hand side, and you can kind of pull it up and down there. Another useful communication tool in Canvas then is this item for announcements. So if you click into the announcements item in the left-hand module menu, announcements are useful in terms of sending out a message kind of to be broadcast to all students. I suppose the benefit of announcements is that if I put out an announcement, then students will get a notification about it. So they will get an email updating them that there has been an announcement put up. But also when they come into the module, there is a record of all the announcements which I've put out in this area here. So I suppose the benefit is that they get a notification, but even if they click into the module a week later, all of the different kind of announcements are available inside here. So it's just kind of a way of, I suppose, making sure that kind of students will be able to kind of see the announcements that you put out. And what I can do, the way I would create an announcement is kind of similar to a discussion. I click on the red plus announcement button up here. And from here, I can give it a title. So reminder to assignments. Again, I can use the items on the right-hand side to put in specific links. So reminder that the deadline is coming up for, I will say, assignment 2. And again, I don't have to worry too much about posting to the various sections, and I can add an attachment if I so wish. Now, a useful feature as well in terms of announcements is that there is an option here to delay posting. So if I save this announcement, it will go out immediately to all kind of staff and students in this module. But what I can do if I want to is I can tick this box to delay posting, and I can decide, okay, I want this to go out, let's say Monday morning, and we'll say at 6 a.m. So what this gives me the ability to do is I can sit down right here, right now. I can write all the announcements that I want to go out over the next 3 to 4 weeks, and I can delay the posting and kind of set them up so that they go out at specific times. I suppose this is just useful in terms of it takes any kind of pressure off me in terms of having to remember to send students an announcement for this or an announcement for that. It just means that I can kind of write them all in one sitting and that they'll go out at the scheduled times whenever they need to. So I just press save, and that then will be sent out. And you can see after I've created it, the content of this announcement will not be visible until 23rd of March at 6 a.m. So another useful feature in terms of maybe just, this is more so for maybe kind of keeping track of students, but there is also an option in Canvas to view course analytics. So on the home page, if I click into the view course analytics button over here, what this will allow me to do is basically I can get a general overview of, I suppose, activity within the course in terms of, peak times people have been looking at kind of different things, submissions submitted, grades given, so on and so forth. And at the base of the page, then there are all of the students which are listed in my module will be listed here. And I can get a quick overview in terms of the number of page views they've done, participation, submissions, current score, so on and so forth. And if I want to, what I can do is I can simply click on any of the students in question, and that then will give me a more kind of thorough breakdown in terms of what these particular students have done, what activities they've been doing, what communications they've been kind of engaging in, any submissions they have or have not done, and also their kind of general kind of grades. And I can move through the various students while I'm in here using this area up here on the top right corner, so I can switch between students to see what individual students have been doing. Okay, so in addition to that, then there's also the option for the gradebook. So the gradebook can be a useful tool in terms of communicating with students as well. If I click into the grades item in the left-hand side here, what this will present to me is essentially all of the different marks which students have gotten for individual assignments. So each assignment in this module is going to be a column, and the students' kind of marks will be given inside in that column. In case it's of use to people as well, what you can do as well is you can click into the any of the cells for their particular assignment. So let's say if I had all of their marks kind of worked out already, I can simply come into the grade book, click in here and go, all right, they get 65, they got 57, so on and so forth. But what is a useful feature inside in the gradebook is if I want to, I can go for, let's say, assignment 2. So let's say I want to send out a reminder to anybody who hasn't yet submitted against assignment 2. I can go up to the top kind of row here. I can click on the menu item here for this, and I can select here message students who. And if I select that, that brings up this additional pop-up box, and I can identify, okay, I want to message students who haven't submitted yet, or I might want to message students who scored less than, let's say, 50% and maybe send them some additional resources or so on and so forth. But what I might do is select, haven't submitted yet, and I can simply put something in here to say, I noticed that you haven't submitted for the second assignment, please do so as soon as possible, so on and so forth. So that's a useful tool, just being able to identify particular groups of students and being able to send them a message specifically to them with kind of specific resources or instructions or things like that. So in addition to this, I'd also like to just very briefly cover some elements in terms of assignments. So the way that one would create an assignment inside in Canvas is I can click into the assignments area here, and all of the assignments which I've created will be available to me and to students inside in this area here. And again, just a quick reminder that assignments like units, like files, they're published. So you can click on to publish or unpublish those the same way you would a file which has been created. So what I might do under assignments is I can create a new assignment by clicking on the red plus assignment button up here. And an assignment inside in Canvas is essentially like a virtual pigeonhole. It's just somewhere where I can ask students to submit a file to me, and they can do that through this assignment. So we'll call this assignment 3. Again, I can add instructions in here. So what I would typically put in here might be the brief. So I might say, for example, I'll click into the files area up here, and I will select, let's say, the brief, which I've uploaded, or else I can upload it directly here. I might also wish to put in, for example, a link to this is a report on what we covered in units week 1, week 2, so on and so forth. And if I scroll down the page here, then there's a number of additional options. In terms of points, I would always recommend marking an assignment out of 100 points in Canvas. Just my own experience, and please feel free to do whatever suits you best. But I feel the system just kind of works a little better, and it's just a little easier to manage if I'm marking out of 100. In terms of assignment group, we'll maybe cover that in a later training session. You don't need to worry too much about that, and you don't need to worry about displaying grades as. This option can be useful, however. So if I select this, essentially what this means is that I can give students a mark and I can give them feedback, but whatever mark I give them won't count towards their final grade within Canvas. Now, this is maybe a bit superfluous to requirements because the final marks go into web for faculty anyway. So, you know, this is maybe just useful in terms of if you want to give students feedback on a draft report that they submit, it can be a useful tool, but it's not essential because their final grade isn't really represented in Canvas anyway. It's represented in Web for Faculty. So you can tick that or not if you want. Under submission type then, there's a number of options available here, but I would say the most common, the most safest, and the most reliable method of doing this is to select that the submission type is online and that it is a file upload. Now, depending on the subject matter of what you're teaching, if I wanted students to give me like an MP4 or an MP3 file, I might select media recording. If I wanted them to just give me a URL, I can select the website and URL. And there's also an option here for text entry, which means that if that is ticked, students have the ability to type directly into Canvas. The only issue with text entry is that there's no option to save and to come back to it later. So unless I want them to give me, let's say, some text there and then, text entry I would recommend kind of not using. The safest option by far, and what the system I think works best with really, is a file upload. And by default, this will accept any type of file. If I just want them to give me a PDF or a Word document or so on and so forth, I can select this additional option here and type in, for example, .pdf. But I would recommend, maybe in terms of file uploads, just leaving it as whatever the student wants to give. You usually don't have to worry about doing a group assignment, and there is an option here for peer reviews. I have never really used it myself, but there is an option for requiring peer reviews if you so wish. Under the assign section to then assign, I would usually leave it as assigned to everyone. That simply means that all students will be required to do it. The available from and until we covered with the discussion. If I fill these in, it means that this won't be visible to students until after this date, and it'll be invisible to them after this date. Again, I'd recommend leaving those blank because it can just cause confusion for students if something's appearing and disappearing. The due date, however, is important. So the due date is essentially the deadline for this particular assignment. So I can set a due date, let's say, of the 22nd and at a particular date. Incidentally, if you don't put in a particular time for Canvas, then the default time will always be a minute to midnight. So it's giving students all of Sunday to submit against this. So the due date is important because after the due date passes, students will still be able to submit, but the system will just kind of flag to me that the student submitted late. So like I said, I would leave these blank, but I would recommend putting in a due date for any assignment. So just to very briefly recap in terms of an assignment, when I create a new assignment, I give it a title, I give it something of a quick description, I set points to 100, I would set it to be online and a file upload, and I would set a due date. And I wouldn't really worry about any of the other options. All of that, I think, is kind of the bare basic you need to get an assignment up and running. And if I hit save and publish, that is then available to students. Now, what I might very briefly do is if I go back to the home page and I go into student view, a useful way of testing out the assignment that you've just set up is to go into student view and to try and submit against it through this. So I might go into assignments. I would click into assignment 3. And from a student perspective, what they would do is they would simply go into the assignment, they would press the submit assignment button up here, and then they can grab a file and upload that into Canvas. So when they hit submit assignment, they have the ability to add comments here as well. That then has been uploaded for this particular student. And if I leave student view and go back into this as a teacher, what I can see is that over on the right hand side now, there are some additional options available. So it's identified that kind of after students begin submitting, there are options available here. So if I want to, I can press download submissions. And what that will do is it will zip up all of the submissions which students which have been submitted, and allow me to download those and kind of mark and make my way through those on my own machine in my own time. But there is also this option available for SpeedGrader. So SpeedGrader is Canvas's kind of built-in feedback and kind of marking tool. So when you open up SpeedGrader, what this allows you to do is it allows you to see the work that the student has submitted over on the left-hand side here. And then I have a number of options in terms of giving them marks and giving them feedback. So over in the right-hand area here, if I want to, I can download the original file that they uploaded. So if this was a PDF or a Word document, by clicking on this up here, I can give them their mark inside in this area here. So we'll give this 65. And I can give them overall feedback inside in this area here. So overall, very good work, so on and so forth. There is also an option here to attach a file. So if I wanted to give, for an example of a good report or an additional kind of piece of research which might be useful to them. And there is also this option here for a media comment. And very briefly, if I click that, what that will do is it will allow me to identify if I want to use audio, if I want to record a message directly into Canvas, either through just video or audio as well. So if I wanted to, for example, give them quite quick audio feedback, I could simply record some audio in here for them. Very, very good work. Watch out for XYZ. So that can be quite a useful way if you just, for example, want to give your students quite quick, kind of straightforward feedback, kind of in a rapid enough fashion. You can simply record audio for them and it saves you having to type. Alternatively, I can type text in here. So very good work, so on and so forth. So that's useful for kind of giving them general feedback. If I wanted to give them more specific feedback in terms of the work that they've done, there's a number of tools available to me on the top here, which I can use to give work or feedback relating to specific areas of their work. So this point annotation tool, for instance, is a useful one. What I can do basically is I can click anywhere on the work that they've submitted, and that will allow me to put in a comment. So for example, I might say very good introduction. There's also an option for highlighting text. So if the text is readable in the Word document or PDF, I can use this and I can maybe highlight kind of particular parts of text that they have. I can add in kind of this speech bubbles or text bubbles as a strike through option. And there's also an option to draw. So if, for example, they upload a diagram or something similar, I can select this and I can highlight particular areas. So watch out for XYZ, so on and so forth. When I'm happy with all of that, what I can do is I can press the submit button down here. And when I'm happy with that, what I can do is I can use these navigation features up in the top right corner to move on to the next student. And I can see any student that I've given feedback to will have that kind of tick next to them. And otherwise I can move between the various students this way. Now, one issue in terms of using SpeedGrader is that if I have 100, anytime I give a student kind of feedback or a mark, they'll get a notification about it immediately. So if I have 100 students, that will mean that student 1 is getting their marks and their feedback a lot earlier than student 100 is getting. So to circumvent this, what we can do is inside in SpeedGrader, I can go up to this icon up here, which is this eye icon, which is an option for posting or hiding grades. If I click this, the option will become available for me to hide marks. And what this lets me do is basically, if this is selected, and if I click this, you can see the eye icon will change to an eye with a strike through it. And essentially, if this is the case, it means that I can give students marks and I can give them feedback, but no students will get a notification or will be able to see the marks and the feedback they've been given until I come back in here and turn this off again. So I guess the process would be I would open up SpeedGrader before I give the first student their marks and their feedback. I would kind of hide marks and feedback. I would give all of the students their kind of feedback and their grades. And when I'm happy, when I've got through student 1 to 100, I come back in here and I select post grades. And if I do that, then that means everybody gets their marks and their feedback at the same time. So in terms of, I'm aware that that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of Canvas, but I suppose the intention was to give you just some initial kind of information about how you might kind of use it for facilitating remote teaching. Maybe one other useful thing, just very, very briefly, just a quick tip is if I have a number of files that I want to upload, a useful way of doing that is if I go into the files area here, what I can do is I can either drag and drop files into this area here. I can use the red upload button here and I can grab, let's say, a couple of different things and upload them. And if I go back into my units then and I want to add a file, I can simply click on the add button. I can select file. And you can see any files which I've put up in the files area will be available to me to pull in here. You can also use that drop down there to add in external URLs, to add in links to discussions or to assignments. So you can set up this kind of unit area as being very kind of clear for students. So for example, if an assignment was due the end of week 3, I can select assignments, assignment 3, and add that item in. And just as a final note, just a quick reminder, the help feature, so access to the tier 1 support is available over here in the help icon at the bottom of the left hand menu, and you can use that help icon to access, for example, sending them a ticket, for web chat, and also for telephone support. So again, I really would encourage you, if you can, to make use of that support feature inside in Canvas. So if you'll please bear with me 2 minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to switch back over to my, I'm going to switch back over to my slides. And just a quick reminder then of some of the supports. I think we've covered the 24/7 support in a good bit of depth. Tell.cit.ie, we're kind of using that as a bit of a hub for all our online resources and our online any training which we'll be doing, any supporting resources which we make available. All of those will be kind of available here, and that links to also to our help center, which we have a number of articles there on various elements relating to Canvas and Big Blue Button and screencasting and so on and so forth. But we're adding to these the entire time as well, and we also have an online open course in Canvas for all CIT staff. So it's called Canvas Learn. And again, if you'll bear with me 2 minutes, the way that you can access this is if you go into, if you go into your dashboard, what you can do is you can click into the modules area here. You can click into all modules, and then at the top of the screen, there's a button for browse more modules. So if you select that, you can select the Canvas Learn course. And basically, we're adding to that course the entire time, but that really is a collation of all the various elements in terms of Canvas, and it tries to take you through those in quite a sequential way. So we're adding to the resources we have available the entire time. But I would, as I said before, I would encourage you, if it's at all possible, to maybe try and use the 24/7 Tier 1 support as your first kind of port to call. Again, for the simple reason that I think they're the most likely in terms of being able to give you additional support or additional feedback. The final suggestion then, just before I let you all go, is that Garrod put out a link to a form which we've made available. If you do have any tips or tricks, or if you have taught online or remote before and you know of anything that has worked particularly well for you that you might want to share with the rest of CIT, please do fill in that form, and any tips or tricks you give, we'll make available to all CIT staff. Obviously, we'll give you full credit to it, but the notion here is just that it's a space where we can maybe, share with each other what we've done in the past that works well or what we found useful, and the intention is then that becomes kind of a common resource that kind of goes out to benefit everybody. So and again, just tell.cit.ie is where we're trying to make all those resources available. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming along this morning. I'm aware that was a real whistle-stop tour in terms of how one might use Canvas. What we will do is we will maybe leave it there. Anybody who is watching via YouTube, I know that there was 1 or 2 comments, so we will get to those. But anybody who is participating via Zoom, if you want to stick around, I'll be happy to take any questions you have in the chat area there. And otherwise, we'll be running additional training sessions, as I said, over the next few days and weeks. So hopefully look forward to seeing everybody at those. All that's left to say is thanks for coming along, and please do stay safe. And yeah, anybody attending through Zoom, if you want to throw any questions into the chat area, I'd be happy to take those now. So thanks very much, everybody.